Imam Malik, having lived a long life and dedicating his whole life for teaching and learning and so on and so forth, he had so many students. So many students. Even that Imam al-Dhahabi, when he talks about him in the biographies, he says, it's an impossible task to enumerate the students of Imam Malik. They were just, even he used the word, لا يحصيهم عد. They were countless. They were countless. His students were countless. His main students that really stood out and they became very well known are 1,000. 1,000 of his students became prominent scholars, very famous and well known everywhere. So you can see the impact of Imam Malik. The impact of Imam Malik. And his students come from different countries all over the Muslim world. Among the most prominent of his students was Imam al-Shafi'i himself. Imam al-Shafi'i was one of the main students of Imam Malik. He studied with him for years. And also Abdul Rahman bin al-Qasim. Abdul Rahman bin al-Qasim al-Misri, one of the main scholars of the Maliki madhab. And he's the one who took the madhab of Imam Malik to Egypt. He established it in Egypt, and that led to the Maliki madhab spreading in al-Maghrib al-Arabi, in the West, in what we know today as the west of Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Mauritania, and the Sahara al-Arabiya, the Arab desert. So the madhab, the scholars of these areas, they took the fiqh from Abdul Rahman bin al-Qasim in Egypt. They came to Egypt and they studied with Abdul Rahman al-Qasim. They studied with him the Maliki tradition, and they took it and they established it in the North Africa, West North Africa, and it became established, and then it was taken to Al-Andalus, and it was well established there, and the leadership of the Muslims in these areas, they actually took the Maliki madhab as the official madhab, and they established it, and they actually, like all the judges, all the scholars, were actually studying and teaching the Maliki madhab. Until today, the Maliki madhab is the prominent madhab in these areas. Until today. There's a story about Imam Malik when he was young, like a teenager, and they used to study, randomly like study, but not very dedicated. He had a hobby. Imam Malik had a hobby. And his hobby, I haven't seen it in the West, but in the East it's still common. Basically he would have pigeon and look after them. He would have pigeon at home, and he would look after them, make them reproduce, sell them, and so on and so forth. So Imam Malik was a fan of pigeon. So he had his own farm of pigeon. A small farm by the house. So, and he had a brother called An-Nadr. An-Nadr was the brother of Imam Malik. Generally speaking, people were interested in knowledge. So their father, and that's a very good thing for parents, their father wanted them to study. So An-Nadr was more studious than Imam Malik. So he studied more than Imam Malik. He would attend more halaqas than Imam Malik. So he was ahead of Imam Malik, or Malik, who was a child at the time. He was ahead of him in knowledge. So their father used to sit with them, and he used to ask them questions, Islamic questions. What do you think of this if this happens? What do you think the ruling would be? Do you know any hadith about this matter? And he would actually, this is how he would have a conversation sometimes with his children. So one day he gave them a question to Malik and An-Nadr, his two children. So Imam Malik answered, his answer was wrong. His brother answered, his brother An-Nadr answered, and he got it right. So the father looked at Malik and he said to him, لَقَدْ أَلْهَاكَ الْحَمَامُ عَنْ طَلَبِ الْعِلْمِ. You know, having pigeon and looking after pigeon has kept you away from studying knowledge. So that actually affected Imam Malik, and he decided to study. So he left the pigeon thing, and he dedicated his time. He was a teenager at the time, so he dedicated his life for studying and learning. So he went and studied. One of his main teachers is the great Tabi'i Ibn Hurmuz. Ibn Hurmuz, very well known for his knowledge, for his level of worship and dedication. He was a very well known worshipper. So Imam Malik studied with him for 7 years, until he passed away. Imam Malik would come to him at Fajr time, stay with him all the time all the day till Isha, and then he would go back home. So he became dedicated, he wanted to study. So previously, another also excelled as a student of knowledge and as a scholar. So at some stage, people, like if the name of Imam Malik came about, who's Malik? Oh, he's the brother of another. Why? Because another was known for his knowledge. But then Imam Malik excelled, and now if they ask about another, they say he's the brother of Malik. So Malik became more known, well known than his own brother, until today. So Imam Malik studied with Ibn Hurmuz, as we said, for 7 years, staying with him every day. And Imam Malik was intelligent, by the way. So Ibn Hurmuz sometimes would teach him and spend time just with Imam Malik and teach him. But there was a lot of disruptions. People would come to Ibn Hurmuz, being one of the main scholars in Medina, they would come to him and ask him questions, and take a lot of the time from Imam Malik, that he wished he would take the time for himself. So Imam Malik used to bring dates with him, like a sack full of dates. He would bring it with him, and he would go to the children of Ibn Hurmuz, the children of his own teacher. And he would give them dates, and he would say, listen, I'm giving you these, so if someone comes and asks about your father, tell them he's busy. Okay? Tell them he's busy. And that's right, I mean, he's busy. He's busy teaching Imam Malik, right? The young boy Malik. So that actually worked. That worked. So he managed to get a lot of attention from Ibn Hurmuz and a lot of teachings. And as I said, he spent 7 years with him. Another one of the main teachers as well of Imam Malik is Nafi', Mawla Ibn Umar. Nafi' had been a slave of Ibn Umar. But later on, Ibn Umar freed him. And he's one of the main teachers of tafsir, of hadith, of everything. Nafi', like, that's known. He's one of the main students of Ibn Umar. Ibn Umar, we know, Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of Umar ibn Khattab, the great companion. So Nafi' took most of the knowledge of his teacher, Ibn Umar. Imam Malik studied with him. Imam Malik studied with him. And for those who study hadith, we know, in terms of isnad, chains of narration, the most authentic chain of narration is called the golden chain. As-silsila al-dhahabiyya, the golden chain of narration. That's the most authentic chain of narration ever, you can ever find. Anyone who studies hadith at a basic level, he will be taught this. So this chain of narration is actually Malik, an Nafi', an Ibn Umar, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Malik, narrating from Nafi', who is narrating from Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar, who is narrating from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the golden chain of narration. There's no question about its authenticity. The highest level of authentic hadith come from this chain of narration. So it's called As-Silsila Al-Dhahabiyya. Nafi', rahimahullah, there was something about him. He had temper. He wasn't a kind person. So sometimes he would be harsh on people. That's him. That's his personal demeanor. So sometimes he really was harsh on them. And like he had a short temper, and he would teach only a specific number of hadith every day. And he would not teach more than this. So some of the students would come to him after he has taught his collection of hadith for that day. Some of them would come to him and say, teach me. And he would say, go away from here. And he would be harsh on them. So he would not teach. Imam Malik was, as we said, more diplomatic, as he did with the children of Ibn Hurmuz. So what he would do, from his own words, he says, كنت أخرج من بيتي أتظلل بظل الشجر. I used to come out of my house. He was still young at the time. I would come out of my house and I would seek the shade of trees. So he would spend most of his time. What was he doing? He was waiting. He was trying to catch an opportunity. ثم ألقى نافعا فأسأله عن مسألة أو مسألتين. Then I would, seek an opportunity to find Nafi' doing just nothing. So I would go to him and ask him 1 or 2 questions. And that's it. He couldn't ask him more. Because if he asked more, Nafi' would actually tell him off. So he would ask 1 or 2 questions. Then he said, then I would leave him for an hour or 2, and then would come back to him and ask him 1 question or 2 questions. So he used to do this multiple times every day. So he managed to get, he's probably the one who learned the most from Nafi' by that way. See, you see, subhanallah, like sometimes oftentimes confrontation doesn't give you the best results. Sometimes you need to find an intelligent way, be more diplomatic. One of his main teachers as well is Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. He's like well known, one of the main scholars of hadith, Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, and he's a man of wisdom. He's a man of wisdom. Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, he had a style of teaching, but he was granted a lot of acceptance among the people. So Imam Malik says, we used to wait for Imam Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri to come out of his house so we could learn from him. And we used to gather outside his doorstep. And he said we would gather outside his doorstep that we would actually fall on one another. Because they were competing on who would be the closest to Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. So he said we would compete, and there would be such a huge number of students waiting at the doorstep that we would actually oftentimes stumble, and